we also share, conference opportunities, training opportunities, just any kind of opportunity that we come across that we think could be useful to CSOs. On the other hand, once you're a registered CSO, or you can also register as an individual or another entity. So if you're a funder, you're an intermediary, you're an international NGO, you can all register and be able to, one, obviously access the content we're putting out, but also you yourself can put out content. So, and we have some very active CSOs who are writing articles every month. And so we are offering, the platform is a space to, again, tell your story. What are you doing? What impact are you having? And likewise, if they have a job that they want to post, because if you think of our sector, where do you go to look for African CSO jobs? Maybe you can go to DevX if you can afford it. I mean, we have no outlet. So I think any help in terms of information, in terms of connection, we think is very valuable. Yeah. And finally, and we're building now the tech side of it to enable certain other things. And technology is really expensive, Yeah. So we really envisage this as a social space where groups can connect with each other. They can form networks. You know how you make friends or you follow people on LinkedIn or wherever, that this becomes possible. Oh, I see somebody, oh my God, they're in my same locality, they're working on the same issue. Let me connect. Yeah. So that's really, long-term the vision. And of course for funders, it hopefully will make it easier and more effective. They can more efficiently source African partners. But ultimately, like I said, contribution to the broader sector is the knowledge. Yeah. So it's not just data about individual organizations, but like I described earlier, when we start to aggregate this data, then we can start to talk about the sector. Right. What do we do, collectively? What's our value to society collectively? And why should people care that we exist? Yeah.
Thank you, Rose. And a quick fun fact about you.
No, I'm lying.
That is the fun factor. Yeah.
I'm shy.
You're shy. We can tell.
Another lie.
We can tell.
My fun fact is that I got on a plane on a one-way ticket from London when I was 26 to Uganda.
And now
never look back.
Never look back. Yeah, that's a way to go. And now we can pass the mic on to you.
Okay, so yes, my name is Rose Maruru, and I am the co-founder and CEO of EPIC Africa. EPIC stands for Enhancing Philanthropic Impact in Africa, of course. So we are based in Dakar, although we are mostly virtual. Maybe before I give my intervention around data and metrics, just to say that our organization is what can be described as part of the infrastructure of that ecosystem. And I think in that room they talked a lot about the need for infrastructure and talk about hard to measure. Whenever we talk to funders, we have a really hard time raising money because we can't measure the impact of our work in the terms that funders want it, like how many women saved and how many children saved, and you have a ticker on your, on your landing page on your website showing how many lives you saved. We can't show, we do the invisible work. It's like we compare our work to the plumbing. When you're building a house or a building, there's all the plumbing that makes things work. And you don't even know it's there until your toilet is not working one day. And then it's like, oh my God, So talk about metrics and not being visible and being measured. So we're still trying to figure out how to measure the impact of our work. So a little bit about, I wanted to just talk about how and why we exist and what we do as a way of demonstrating the importance of data. So EPIC Africa we were motivated really to start EPIC Africa because of our lived experience working in global development and philanthropy, and really observing, if you think of that space as a market, really observing and experiencing real market failures. And the biggest one is asymmetry of information. Just knowing, who are the non-profits or NGOs or CSOs in any country working on any issue? It's impossible. And so we used to have this experience where in the last organization that I worked in before we founded EPIC Africa, literally every week there'll be a funder or some consultant or somebody, hey, do you know who's working on fill the blank? And of course we all knew the 5 organizations in Nairobi or Kampala or Dakar that everybody else knew. And so causing another market failure that they kind of cornered the market, if you will, and really huge barriers to entry for new organizations. Organizations led by young people, or organizations that are in a little village out there in Turkana that have no idea and have no contact in Nairobi. So really, so for us, we saw data, particularly just basic data about the sector, as being really critical to, democratizing the space, opening up the space, and opening, really providing a kind of more level playing field, if you will. But for funders, it gives them a wider pool to choose from. So you're not limited to the 5, known groups in Nairobi or Dakar, for that matter. So we've been on a journey since 2018, when we got, really entered our first foray into collecting data. Again, basic data: what's your name, as an organization, where are you located, what do you do, how do you do it, how many staff do you have, what are your sources of funding, etc., etc. Just to have basic profiles. And now we launched 2 years ago, almost to the day, the African CSO platform, which we are building to become a hub, if not the hub, for all things data and information about the civil society space and philanthropy in Africa. So you can go there and search for CSOs. So we have something like 4,000 plus now, CSOs from 47 countries. Obviously we have no baseline, so we don't know, is that 0.000% of who exists? Like, there's no baseline, so we don't know. Are we doing well? We don't know. But we know among the platforms that have emerged in the last couple of years, we seem to have the biggest database. I don't know what that says. So really, we need data on this continent. We need data in this sector, because if we don't, then we're invisible. And when you're invisible, other people tell you a story, and the story is told about our sector. We all know we're ineffective, we're corrupt. What are we doing anyway? We want to be politicians. And yet those of us who are in the sector know the incredible work that groups are, and the impact they're making, but with very little visibility. So data enables visibility. It enables the emergence of new and more granular stories and diverse stories of who we are. And maybe to just end, because I was given 5 minutes, just to give an example of what data can enable. So one of the questions that we ask in our surveys, and even if you're registering on our platform to create your profile, like, who are your top, we said 4, I don't know why 4, it could have been 3, sources of funding. And we give a whole long list: bilaterals, African foundations, foreign foundations, individuals, etc., etc. And back in 2018, when we did our first survey, we saw that after international NGOs, individuals were the next most selected option. And we thought, this looks like a blip. This is not the story we know, because the story we know is that African CSOs are overwhelmingly reliant on foreign funding. But maybe it's a certain kind of African CSO, not all of them. So we did asked the question in a second, third, and fourth survey, and the same thing. So we thought, okay, let's unpack this and see what's going on. So who are these non-profits who are getting funding from ordinary Africans? Because, and again, the story we've been told is, yes, Africans are very generous, but we give only horizontally. We give to our families, to our mosque, to our church, but we are not, funding systems change. Guess what? The organizations, among the organizations that tell us that they do get, some funding or some donations from ordinary people, they're working on human rights. They're working in climate. They're working in all issues. So data can really shape and change a narrative. I think it's empowering. And whenever we've been sharing this report, and there's a QR code somewhere where you can see the report, I think people find it really empowering, because we kind of know this is happening, but it's never been quantified. And, so now there's data to begin to actually say this is exactly how much. And there's real power in that. Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon. As mentioned, I'm the other Sam. Sam Mugasha from Imaginable Futures. For those who do not know, Imaginable Futures is actually a philanthropic organization that supports education across Africa. Our two strategy strands is actually youth development, youth skilling and livelihoods, and the other one is supporting local evidence generation and local research organization and building that ecosystem. So I think that's why I was selected to talk about data and metrics and measurements. I wanted to start with a provocation. As we think about measurement, what if the most powerful signs of change are the ones we don't know how to measure, or worse, the ones we ignore because they don't fit our reporting templates, which is what I think everyone here has already spoken about. And one thing I want to start with is actually discussing power. I think in this conference or throughout the philanthropic career existence, the person who has always defined impact has been from the person who gives the money, and that's the person who has the power. But I think we were provoked today in the morning around, are we actually centering communities and asking communities to actually tell us, is there impact? Has my life been changed? And what would that reporting really look like when we anchor those people? So philanthropy has been the one that has defined what counts, and the voice that has been taken to matter in terms of saying this work is good, this work is not. But I think one thing that we're being provoked with in this session, in this various sessions so far, has been, are we really centering the communities to actually report back to us? And one interesting organization that we've supported is, and I think they're here as well, is Firelight Foundation, that has built this ecosystem where, as they support organizations, they fund them, they ask the communities that those organizations are then implementing to report back. Is this beneficial? Has your life been transformed? Is this working? And I think that has been something that we have learned as an organization, that we don't know it all. There are different ways of knowing. And if you center on the person you look to impact and the ecosystem you look to impact, you'll understand things in different ways. And it's because impact, I think, has been seen to be neutral, but from all the engagements and everything that is happening in the sector right now, we have known that it is political, actually. The other thing I want to bring out is, we've been talking about co-creation, collaboration, working together. All those are very good buzzwords, but it is very difficult, and it is expensive. And one reason it doesn't work also is we forget that it takes a lot of, and expensive is not funding and saying I want collaboration. One thing I've realized is, or we've realized is, it takes a lot of human resource as well. It takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of meetings like this and follow-ups from these meetings, but who is going to do it? We all have KPIs that we need to deliver in our organizations. We will go back, and I will go back to doing whatever I'm doing, but you won't do it. So there's something we've supported in Africa with a few other funding partners like Echidna Giving, and it is around building the ecosystem around Africa education research. And we call it the Africa Education Research Consortium. And what moved us to support this work is we learned that only 3% of education research is contributed from Africa. And over 80% of local education research is actually underfunded. What the likes of Emmanuel want to do and the other organizations want to do or believe is important for the lived reality, in their lived realities, is actually underfunded. But why is that important? We have come to learn that unless in living in that country, or not living, unless that is your lived reality, it is difficult for you to, not difficult, but it might be challenging to be able to actually come up with solutions that are contextually relevant. And we've seen evidence from some of the organizations that we supported. But this initiative we started in 2021 has not been an easy one. It grew from 4 funders to over 12 funders. And what we came to learn is, for you to move, it's the quote that was put there, for you to move fast, you move alone, but for you to go far, you actually go with others. So you deal with different things around timelines and human resources, like I was mentioning. And then I think Rose brought it out well, that data isn't just numbers, it's how are we capturing stories, memories, and experiences. One thing that we've been thinking about, and I think it was brought up, is this thing around indigenous knowledge. And I think it was this connection that was being brought out, that I think Emmanuel gave the story around child who was who comes from a pastoralist community, goes to school, they don't get the skills that they require, and then they go back to their communities, they don't have the skills. So when you think about indigenous knowledge and indigenous research, while people are saying that the statistics say 3% of research from Africa is what is being recorded in the global education, whatever platform they have. What we have come to learn is there's so much evidence being generated that is not being counted. There's so much knowledge and insights that can actually begin to reach policymakers who would be able to make critical decisions that would affect the lives of young families and young people. But it's not being brought to the fore. So it's something that we've been really passionate about in terms of how do we elevate indigenous knowledge so that it can actually contribute to evidence generation. We work in systems change, and some things that we have, our career as Imaginable Futures actually started as an impact investor. We went to venture philanthropy. Now we work in systems change. And all across that, we have been learning. And our core focus is actually impact. And there are things that, I don't know if one of the examples that was given as things that are hard to measure, I don't know if there was something around mindsets. Yeah, mindsets, these narratives, these some of these things that if you can transform them, you'll actually change an entire system. But no one is thinking about that or talking about that. So I'd love to leave you with 3 things. Let's leave room for complexity in our work. That things same to Emmanuel's point around the foundation. Let's leave room for complexity, and let's be okay with messiness. And let's also stop insisting on measuring things that are easy. And let's start valuing what matters. Thank you.
I'm really looking for what can we do as practical steps to break away from these problems, which have been described really with accuracy.
Thank you so much.
I want to just reflect on the other SAMs, sort of concluding sort of remark which I thought was extremely powerful in a way, because as you know, we're dealing with polycrisis in our continent. We're dealing with intersectional challenges. We're dealing with complexity. And this data, which is normally the Euro gold standard, I want to argue is not sufficiently matured to help us understand the intersectional sort of nature of the problems that we face. And so rather than not just having to defend, as you sort of said, or needing to defund, but perhaps it's an opportunity for us to reimagine how, from our continental point of view, we're going to rethink how we measure and track and speak to the complexities that we actually face. It's easy to track just one set of figures, etc. But when they begin to intersect, it creates a complexity that we really need to try and get some kind of control of.
Absolutely. Very hard. Inclusion is the other side of it that is even more dicey. And thank you for being bold. It's interesting, the composition of the people who are here today, there is a lot of education in terms of sector, and that's just an observation that's interesting. So I hope that as you talk about Education Alliance, there's conversations that spotlight yourselves and tailored for education. There's quite a few education sector change makers and leaders and practitioners are here. So there were a few questions. I saw Nadia's hand. So I'm going to give you just between 30 seconds and 45 seconds so that we do a quick round and have the hands that were raised to be addressed.
I come from a background before Bloodwater in that intersected with clinical research a lot in the HIV sector specifically. And so this is just for everyone in the room. I think we forget this. And Sam, you kind of brought this back to my mind with what you were saying about collecting the hard things and sitting in complexity. I'm adding a D to your list. Define. Everything about data goes back to what you define. So in theory, everything is collectible. It just means that you pause and take time to define what it is that you're trying to measure. And then you get to decide thereafter, is it quantitative? Do you assign a number to it? Or do you leave it as a quantitative measure to track in another way? But we can collect nearly anything. I don't want to say everything because I really don't believe in those kind of broad sweeping, but almost anything can be defined and thereby collected and then used. So let's just do that.
Interesting. Thank you. And these are the reflections that we are hoping as you think about what you're going to mention, even as the mic goes. Also, what are you being provoked towards, right? Yeah.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, John Bosco, Vice Chair, Rwanda Council of SMEs. I wanted to appreciate Rose in terms of what she has developed. And I'm happy that you are very honest to yourself and to all of us. Because the challenge we have is the baseline. Everyone can generate data, can interpret data, but what is our baseline? Where do we start? And where do we want to be? So I think those are some of the questions that we need to respond to in terms of ownership, in terms of who verifies our data. My background is in economics. We always make a reference to IMF and World Bank. If your data is not verified by World Bank and IMF, then it's not data, it's not credible. So how do we build our credibility like what Rose is doing? And we own it and we defend it. And we are confident that what we have collected is real. And we can use it in decision making. So this is the elephant in the room. As we talk about data collection, data verification, and even use models, but we have failed as Africans to own our own data. Those who read, yesterday there was a report from on the Afrexim Bank. I've been working closely with Afrexim Bank. It has been rated BB by Fitch Rating because they gave money to Ghana, which was poorly rated. For them, but because we cannot defend our data that what Afrexim Bank is doing is impacting positively on Africa, we are all saying no, it is they have been downgraded. So I think we need to build a level of confidence in terms of what we are collecting and be able to tell a story. And I wanted to appreciate what Samantha, when we started, what she was saying. I participated in building one-stop border post in Nimuri between South Sudan and Uganda. What our donor was measuring is time and cost to cross the border. But I realized the project I was doing had an impact on 3,000 women. It improved their income because they would be able to even report harassment. But that was not reported because our reporting was time and cost to cross the border. That was the indicator. But the real impact, embedded impact, hidden impact was not reported for. And that is crucial. So as an African, we need really to stand firm, defend our own data, we correct, we interpret, and be confident ourselves. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We could start working towards a solution on education, and then what we end up realizing is job creation, livelihoods, gender-based violence, or gender outcomes are all in the mix. So how do we count for collective? Just 30 seconds, and then we can have a round on this side.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Fatuma Omala. Working with Kukuza Education as Executive Director from Uganda, but also serving with the Regional Education Learning Initiative Africa, really Africa. Data, Africa, our data being recognized. There's this question of publishing. Standards, who has set these standards? We want to tell our stories, but we have these standards, we have all these the ask, the demand for publishing, and who is funding us, who is supporting us to even publish? Those of you, Dr. Emmanuel, who are researchers, you know the cost in terms of time and the money that it takes for one to publish. So these are very tough questions that we need to ask and answer and find solutions to, which goes to the same issues around co-creation and collaboration. Like you said, Sam, it's expensive in all ways, in terms of time, in terms of money, in terms of mobilization, and yet it's very worthy. But are we aligned as the implementers, then our funders? Are we speaking the same language? We all desire that. Where do we go to bring all of us to the same point where we are in agreement, and we are for those that we seek to serve, not for our own what, and ticking boxes of whatever we are defining as what, as impact. There is room for us to achieve that if only we can agree. We are here, a few of us, 500. What will it take for us to reach the so many that are not here that we are working with in this course as we set out here after here?
Thank you for that.
AI is going to play around as far as data is concerned, and who is feeding this data to AI. And I think if we do not think about it that way, Emmanuel, we will still be consuming data with standards from the global north and constantly lament about Africa not publishing, Africa not having data, African copying models that are not realistic, or rather they do not marry with what we have around here. And I think it will be really great if we, even as we move forward, really have lobster conversations around who is in technology and how do we connect those who are in technology, because all of us can't be in the same space at the same time. And how do we connect around, as he speaks about collaboration and who feeds this data, so that we are also not left out. Yeah.
Wonderful. And I encourage you, there is a session.
My name is Margaret.
Yes, Margaret. Yeah. Thank you. So 1, 2, and then third one, we are done. Okay.
Like Margaret, I'm really glad I joined this session. My name is Mendy from the KCBA Foundation, and it's for Dr. Emmanuel, right? But it could be for any one of the panelists. So it sounds like you made a very deliberate effort to not have your data, as well as the work that you do, really, can I say, perform for the Western gaze, right? So you've chosen to have your publications as well as the data you seek, for instance, by partnering with the Kenya Bureau of Statistics as the avenue through which you are centering and publishing your work. So for me, my question is, what drove that decision? And how have you stayed grounded in the communities that you've served, even when it has meant saying no to recognition or to funding? I'm really curious about the courage and how do we make that contagious? Thank you.
Soil, and so much. I'm sending messages to my team, because sometimes you feel like you're going a little bit crazy, and then you realize we're all grappling with this. So just to say thank you for the talks. I lead Gold Youth Development Agency, and we're working with a network of grassroots youth-led organizations and CSOs in 9 African countries. And we've been on quite a long journey developing a web app that's offline, online, that is really a tool to serve grassroots organizations in their own program design linked to youth transformation, working with young people, both in school and out of school, around mindset shift towards what are those education outcomes that link to long-term sustainability, not just academic in school, but numeracy, literacy, and then value creation, solving problems that add value to communities, linked to almost asking us for their data, but ourselves wanting to move towards trust. I think the power's gone. Can I speak loudly? Just really giving a voice at the table to those on the ground that are experts, that may not have fancy boards, that may not have fundraising strategies. And yesterday in this discussion, it was like sometimes you bring in due diligence and you're breaking the very experts on the ground that are best positioned to serve their communities. They know their communities, they understand. And yet how do we still gather the data to see, is transformation happening? Are we not recreating the wheel? How are we learning from one another? So we're on a journey, but I didn't even know about your CSO database or the network. And so I think just the more that we collaborate and gather, that we use our efforts to have almost that 1 + 1 = 11 impact. But yeah, thank you.
Wonderful. Great. So allow me to ask you to hold to those, return in the afternoon. We give you literally, because you're also coming back in the afternoon, we are giving you literally a minute each to just summarize, and then we can close. We want to be the work stream that keeps time for lunch.
But let me just mention 2 quick things. One, we have a network of 52 grassroots organizations based across Kenya. In every county, they're the ones that lead our work in the counties. And we just look for money and work with them so that they do the work in the communities to, in a way, embed us in the communities and be able to do what the communities require. On the same note, the question by Mendy about why we decided deliberately not to do what is expected. A number of things, 2 quick ones. In 2019, just before COVID, I was sitting in a European capital with 7 other organizations who were trying to raise 40 million euro, a grant. And after we had developed our proposal, we were told to go to a particular university that I will not name and speak to the chair of the Center for African Studies. We were told he was the advisor for the Minister for Foreign Affairs, and he will be able to tell us what is required in that proposal so that we can be able to tailor our proposal to get the money. We went to see him, and he was very candid with us. He told us, nothing scares Europe like an educated, unemployed, and angry African youth. I am using his words. And he told us on the basis of that, Europe is going to fund 2 things in Africa. It's going to fund sexual and reproductive health to contain population growth in Africa,
And it is going to fund TVET because a TVET-educated graduate is not ambitious, is unlikely to be restless, and cause instability in their country and occasion immigration problems for Europe. Needless to say, our proposal was not on one of those, and we were not funded. Initially, we were actually given a technical knockout. We were told your proposal is not proceeding to evaluation because the CEO of one of the organizations based in Africa was earning so much, and yet it was not above the benchmark that we were given. We pushed back. We said, you have to explain this. And they withdrew that. It was taken to the next level, but we knew they were hiring the evaluators and briefing the evaluators. So we were going nowhere. Even there, we were pushing back. So that informed our decision as an organization to say, we will focus on what is relevant in Kenya, but also what we think is globally relevant. So with our education justice agenda, we are looking at post-2030 agenda. Should post-2030 still continue to look at inclusion and equity, or should it look at education justice? That is our focus. And because I'm an economist, economists are trained about something called the envelope curve. I'm happy we have economists in the room. The envelope curve is the long-run growth path. And if you keep your eyes on that curve, you will make decisions that in the short run may look suboptimal, but they remain optimal in the long run. And that is our focus. Thank you.
I think feeding our data is what is most important. What are the LLMs learning on? And right now, I don't think it's going very well with Africa. And then I'll just leave with one quote. Systems are not broken. They are just perfectly designed to produce the outcomes that are produced.
Yep. On AI, sorry, I forgot to mention it, and I see my colleague who's our AI person looking at me like, Rose, you didn't mention that. So it's really at the core of, so we're looking, in many ways, Epic Africa is a tech and data, organization, and so what actually even enables us to have a vision that's Africa-wide. Imagine trying to map this sector across 54 countries because of technology. We couldn't have dreamt of this 10 years ago when you'd have to go with pen and paper to every town to count. So clearly, what's enabling all of this is technology. We're integrating AI. In fact, I think we've just last week decided which one we are subscribing to, so we can start training our AI on our own data. So we're having a conversation. I think it's on Friday. There's another session on tech and AI. So please come to that. We'll be explaining a little bit more. How we've stayed true, it's been really hard for us. I mean, we didn't get any funding, any donor funding until, not too long ago. So some of us had to go with our salaries, but we believed in this. And we believed in this because of many reasons, both background, lived experience, and really knowing that this is the right thing to do, having worked out there and seen what's out there and being here and knowing that we can do this. So it's the conviction and the passion and dedication.
Let me be brief. So maybe just on AI, first of all, we are already working with grantors who are using AI to read financial statements to speed up due diligence, which works better if you've got standardized financial statements because they can read it better. So we can feed African financial statements into that. So that'd be interesting. In terms of defend and defund, I think one of the things we should defund is separate finance officers for each grant because there's so much separate individual work needed, and we should defund a mindset that thinks at project, grant, donor level and zoom out to organizational level, both for funding, finance, financial sustainability. I think there's a lot of damage that's done to our mindsets because of the financial focus on grants and project accountability. In terms of what to defend, I do think that accountability and transparency and financial trust remains important. We need to rewrite it and make it work for us, but I do think that level of transparency and accountability remains vital.
we try to design it in such a way that ideally, hopefully everyone is able to live with not just a commitment, but a contact.